This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Kids, they're always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. What's something you'd like to learn, whether it be gardening, a new language, or you'd like to beat your bowling score? I don't know. Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because your back-to-school era can come at any age. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/IDK today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/IDK.
Over. Finished. What best describes my libido?
Plot twist.
Optimist.
No, I said plot twist.
Oh, plot twist. I thought you said optimist. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to, for the foreseeable future, the final I Don't Know About That podcast. Look, we're getting a bit emotional here. Jack brought a cake that we'll all blow out later on.
It's over there.
Yeah, yeah. We'll do that off footage.
Yeah.
It's nice of you to put that effort in, Jack. Jack just looked at me and I said, "Hey, how are you feeling?" He goes, "Another day in it." Horrible person.
Another day, another dollar.
Jack's occupation is one of the few jobs that, without saying, actually makes sense.
Another day in paradise.
Another day, another $4.
Whoa, another day above ground.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let's plug our gigs for the last time.
Oh, yeah, you are September 24th this comes out, right?
Yep.
So you have just completed your first run with Jimmy Carr and the Mark Norman Dan Soder
This is the whole thing. This is why the podcast had to stop. I'm away for 2 months. Forrest was away for a month after that.
Yeah.
We just...
give them what they want tours back on. Detroit, Milwaukee, Kalamazoo, Minneapolis, Minnesota. You got all those coming up this week, and then in 2 weeks you're in Calgary, Kelowna, Vancouver again, and Victoria with Jimmy Carr on the Charm Offensive tour. Then you're in Tucson, Phoenix, back in South Africa.
Dan Soder, the Mark Norman ones. Have you done those already?
You just did them.
All right. How'd they go?
Amazing.
That went great. I was there.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, remember you guys solved world peace?
Oh,
yeah, that was a good part. That was the best part.
It was
probably.
like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. The whole world sang together.
Yeah. But the three of you guys did a joke together.
We did a joke together, and then a vortex opened.
Yeah.
And we all stepped through it. Dan tripped in the hole.
December.
So embarrassing.
Soder. December 14th, of course, Los Angeles. It's a big show for you at the United Theater on Broadway, formerly the
come
Ace.
out to that. That's we always have fun at that one. It's the best mood I'm in all year. All my friends and family are backstage.
Sleep in your own bed.
Sleep in my own bed.
In-N-Out burgers.
I always have In-N-Out burgers backstage for people. Everyone's happy to see them. They all judge me to begin with, like, oh, I'll get one later, and then they always do.
So go to JimJefferies.com for that. And then I am actually in Side Splitters next week. Oh, how about that? Side Splitters in Tampa, Florida. I'm at the Wesley Chapel location. We love Side Splitters. I know that was one of
Bobby
your
Jewell.
He doesn't own it anymore.
Yeah, but I still got to give a shout out to Bobby Jewell.
BT, though. You remember BT? He used to run the club.
Yeah.
He owns it now, so yeah. It's a great club. It's one of the better clubs in the country. So come out to Side Splitters in Tampa. And then I'm at the Comedy Inn in Miami. And then I am somewhere else, but it's on ForrestShaw.net.
And moving forward, I'm going to figure out another podcast to do when I come back from all these tours and TV and all that type of stuff. And me and Forrest have another little thing in the works maybe as well that we're talking about. So, So there's things are coming. For all your Forrest Shaw and Jim Jefferies and Jack Hackett needs, there'll be something in the shop.
Something's coming.
Something that you can walk in and pick up.
I actually have something going on right now. I have if you're in the Miami Hurricanes college football.
All right.
Okay.
Who is it?
I do a podcast with Michael Yo right now. And I should find the names.
And when you're doing it with him, is it just hard getting lost in his eyes?
We know that you love Michael Yo.
Or you ever like clean your fists off on his abs? Oh, I got dirt on my hands.
Your fondness of Michael Yo. I remember that podcast that we did where
I love Michael Yo.
I mean, he's a great guy.
He's a great guy. So handsome.
Yeah.
So handsome.
So handsome. Great cock.
Yeah. Jesus Christ.
He knows.
I'm doing a podcast.
I'm speaking in code.
I'm trying to find the fucking link to it.
I think I'm understanding the code.
Massive cock on Michael Yo. Love it.
It's called Comics
Can't get enough of
on
it.
Canes. And I was trying to find like where the platform. It's gonna be on all the platforms. It's already out right now. So and we have it's a football podcast about Miami Hurricanes football. But we have like Roy Wood Jr. did an episode. We have people that come on and talk.
Can I
about
do the
their-
theme song for you?
Sure.
Here comes the story of the Hurricanes. That would be that. I'll change the
That'd
words.
be pretty good.
But here comes the
good.
story of the Hurricanes.
Guess who our sponsor is?
Oh, Hurricane Beverages.
No, you'll like this.
Tornado Ice Cream.
Canes.
Cane's Chicken.
Yeah.
Whoa.
What, they sponsor shit?
Yeah.
Canes, where you been?
Yeah, like we've been here the whole time. I'm going to stop off at Cane's on the way home.
I'll meet you there.
I'll meet you there as well. Sounds good.
Anyways, that's it. Comics on Canes podcast, Michael Yo, check it out. And IDCAP podcast. Follow that on Instagram.
Yeah, give it a
follow
follow.
me. Follow Jack. Follow
look,
Jim.
Shout out
Do
to
it,
look,
kids.
look, just to all the people who have listened to the podcast from the end. We've done over 200 episodes. Look, don't think it goes unnoticed that you kept on tuning in, and to the friends and family who of mine who have always reached out and gone, I just heard your episode about blah blah blah. My mother-in-law who always gives me the dinner party facts she heard on my podcast.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, Becca, but I know where you got that from. I'm going to miss those dinner party facts. This podcast has allowed me to talk at parties without being nervous because I've had things to say.
Yeah.
Now I'll just have to go back to drinking.
Oh no.
Oh,
Gotta
no.
keep going then. Yeah, no. This podcast was. I can't believe how many episodes we've done because this is not an easy podcast to
This
do.
is
It's not
episode
like you just turn it on and-
207.
Yeah, plus ones that we did that we never aired.
Plus ones we don't count in that number.
If
Yeah.
you guys want to give us a lot of money, maybe we'll think of it. No, one's
No.
just like an earthquake.
We don't know
guy.
what those are.
We didn't know what you were doing. I have one of them.
Oh.
Yeah, we did one with Whitney Cummings. Never
Mm-hmm.
aired. Anyways, it wasn't a loss, but I love doing this podcast. It was really fun. It was great going on the road and meeting people that really enjoyed this podcast and liked it.
And we'll be back with something, and who knows, there might be other things to talk about. But at this moment in time, I can't think of another topic.
I think we've covered them all.
So I assume today is going to be shit because we're out of things to say, but let's find out.
Yeah, it's gonna be you're gonna hate it.
Now, Forrest has, before the podcast, already told me that this is going to be one of my favourite topics ever, so
Yeah.
we'll find out.
Please welcome our guest, Mike Parker.
G'day, Mike Parker. Now it's time to play.
Yes, no. Yes,
For the last
no.
time,
Yes,
maybe
no.
ever.
Yes, no. Judging a book by its cover.
All right. Well, you're wearing a Travis Bazzana top. Are we going to be talking about Travis Bazzana? Now, I strangely know a lot about Travis Bazzana only because I've Googled him, but and for other reasons that I'll discuss. Are we talking about Travis Bazzana?
Well, at some point, I hope to, but that's not the primary reason that I've been asked to be on. But I do hope we get to talk about a guy from your hometown.
Are you a big Oregon State fan, or are you just a Travis fan?
Both, and I also work for Oregon State. as
Oh,
a
okay.
broadcaster.
Well, that'll make it. Well, okay. So for the people who are listening at home and they don't know, we'll talk about him a little bit later. But Travis Bazzana is a player for Oregon State who is now going to be in the draft. He is tipped to go first
For Major League Baseball. He's going to Major League Baseball draft.
Major League Basketball. He's tipped to go first. He's a hitter, not a pitcher. And he is from Sydney, Australia.
Nice.
And not just from Sydney, Australia. He went to Turramurra High School, and I went to St Ives High School, and they were the two high schools next to us. My father's a member at Turramurra Bowling Club. This is a local boy that grew up in the same area that I grew up in Australia, and I have wrote to him.
Yeah, you have?
I did. I did when I found it. He went to, because at first you told me there's an Australian in the draft, right?
Yeah.
So then I went, oh, there's an Australian in the draft, and then I went, all right, I got to check this out. And then I was like, fuck me, Turramurra High.
I found out from Mike, our guest, that there was an Australian that was in the draft.
This is like a local public school. This isn't a rich kid or anything like that. Because often with baseball, you get a lot of rich kids because they're private coaches and stuff like that. And also the amazing thing is there's no batting cages in Australia. It's hard to buy the equipment, for fuck's
Everyone's
sake.
playing cricket.
Yeah, like who taught him Where did he get the reps in? Who did he play against? Like, it's very
could ask
interesting.
Mike. I mean,
well, we'll get to that. We haven't even figured out why Mike's here.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But yeah, so I wrote to Travis and I said, "Hey, Travis, I went to Snyder's High." And the first thing Travis wrote back to me was like, "I went to Turramurra High."
Oh, so
And
your
then-
friend-
yeah.
He's
And
very
then he
competitive.
said, and then he told me his dad's a fan, which always makes you feel old.
Yeah, my dad used to like watching you on the old Victrolas.
Yeah, my dad used to watch you in sepia. Yeah, Travis Bazzana, yeah, and he'll either go to Cleveland or Cincinnati, depending on when he's picked. But either way, he's in
exciting.
Ohio.
Exciting for an Australian to be picked first. They're starting near the top, right?
Very exciting,
Yeah.
but he still will end up in Ohio. Which I've got some
They're
things
both
coming
good,
up. Do I?
both good teams, though. Cleveland and Cincinnati. If you're the number one pick, sometimes you're on a shitty team, but they're both actually
He's
pretty
a
good teams.
he's a second baseman. If he starts turning doubles with Ella Dela Cruz, you'll know all about it, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. So we're here to talk about baseball, Mike.
Yes, baseball. Specifically, one aspect of the great game of baseball, one person actually, yes, baseball primarily through one person over the years.
Babe Ruth.
No, but this guy met Babe Ruth.
Oh, so
That kid in the hospital.
yeah.
Right. I think Babe healed him.
Yeah. Was it a Make-A-Wish thing? He met Babe Ruth, so he has to be.
He also met. Oh, that's too good of a clue.
So is this person still alive? Because he'd be
sadly.
extraordinarily old.
He also met Yasiel Puig.
Oh, Vin Scully.
Oh, see, I should have given that thing. That was too easy.
The Wild Horse.
I made it too easy.
The Wild Horse. What a great final podcast, Vin Scully.
We're talking about Vin Scully.
I
yeah.
love Vin Scully with all my heart.
Mike Parker was born in Los Angeles in
I'd give away any of my relatives to have him as a relative.
he's not alive, but
Yeah, but in the day.
okay. Mike Parker was born in Los Angeles in 1958. He grew up in Hacienda Heights and discovered baseball and Vin Scully after listening to him call a Dodgers game at age 7. And
Do it in the Vin Scully voice.
as a child, Mike decided he wanted to be a sports.
As a child, Mike wanted to be
Hold
a
on.
sportscaster.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
He decided. you want me to do it? I thought you meant
That's
Mike.
good.
No, I wanted you to do it.
Decided he wanted to be a sports radio broadcaster, and he followed that dream after graduating from the University of Oregon in
And
1982.
wouldn't you just know it?
All the way
Very good.
to the present.
Wow.
Mike Parker has worked as a sportscaster. Past 26 years, he has been the play-by-play radio announcer for Oregon State Beaver football, basketball, and baseball teams. He is the 6-time Oregon Sportscaster of the Year, and he has been called the Vin Scully of Oregon State. I read this in some articles. And we have a call here of Mike's. We'll play you a call of actual Mike's. You didn't know we were going to play this, but I have a call. This is when Oregon State won the national championship in 2018.
Okay, right.
Here we go.
The Beavers a strike away and out away from the national
very nice,
championship. Kevin Abel trying to finish it here. The 3-2 pitch on the way. Fastball taken. Strike 3 call. And for the third time in the modern era, it is my joy and honor to say the Beavers are the national champions. And the only dog pile of the year taking place behind the mound. The Beavers 5, Arkansas nothing. The third national championship in the Pat Casey era, and it's a complete game, 2-hit shutout for the freshman Kevin Abel, who wins 4 games.
There you go.
You got my dream job, Mike.
That's Mike Parker right there.
I would love to be a baseball commentator. It lends itself to commentary. It's a measured game with moments of bursts of big moments and pauses of nothing. I wouldn't know I'd be a great commentator.
Nothing,
you
right?
can just hear it, right? But cricket does the same thing. But cricket, they always have about 4 or 5 people. Because the game of cricket is so long, they do it in shifts.
Oh, yeah.
So you'll have like 3 blokes, they'll all be ex-players, right? 3 blokes, and they'll do 2 hours, and then like someone else will take over 2 hours.
Too long,
someone
yeah.
else will take over 2 hours. And they pair them up in different pairings. Some of them get a bit feisty with each other and stuff like that. But we had a commentator in Australia called Richie Benno, who was our Vin Scully, who was just an old bloke who went, Australia is 2 for 46 in the 7th inning. Mike Bradley is out there now at bat. You know, that type of thing.
Mike Parker, two things. Does it bother you to hear your own calls? Do you enjoy hearing that? And also tell us a little bit more about, because I kind of shrunk down your whole life, but how you got into being a broadcaster.
It was a little unnerving. I wasn't expecting to hear my own stuff on this podcast. So anytime I hear myself, I sort of, what mistake am I about to make? You know, what am I going to do wrong here as I listen back to those moments? But that was a spectacular moment for Oregon State baseball. And I was honored to get to call that and loved calling that moment. But as Jim said, there's a bunch of pauses of nothing within the game of baseball. Fewer now. And it makes me wonder now, too, Jim, I know you listened to Vin in the later years. I grew up with Vin Scully from 1966 to 1972 at a very young age of 7, didn't miss a Dodger game from age 7 until we moved to Oregon when I was 14. And I listened to Vinny all the time and absolutely loved him. And he inspired me to want to seek out the profession of sportscasting. But I wonder now, in the age we're living in, with everything on television, for one thing, I was a radio kind of phenomenon only.
Yeah.
But with the pace of the game, there's fewer of those pauses that you refer to. And the pitchers get the ball back and they're winding up and they're throwing again. They're getting the ball back and they're winding up and they're throwing again. And Vin Scully was the absolute master storyteller, filling in all those pauses, of which there are fewer now. He was the best storyteller ever. And I'm not sure now that the pace of the game and everything they're trying to emphasize in the modern Major League game would be conducive to that kind of style, because Vin was the best at filling in those pauses and telling us about the history and the lore of the game and the characters that he knew and had met through the game. There's less time for that now.
Did he get fed these stories, or are they just, because I used to see him go like this, and he go, "Here we go, Ichiro Suzuki," like this, right? And Suzuki was Suzuki.
Yeah.
Ichiro Suzuki.
Yes.
He was playing in Japan as a kid, and he said to his mom, "You know what, Mom? I don't know if this is what I want to do for the rest of my life." And she said to him, "What else can you do, Ichiro?" And then he said, "Well, gosh darn it, I better keep playing baseball."
You're right about the "gosh darn it" part too. He would never be any stronger than that. When he was doing games, there was a show on Fox Sports called "The Best Damn Sports Show," period. And Vinny refused to read that promo, and he got away with not promoting that show because of the word "damn" within the best the best damn sports show, period. So that was part of. You're right. He would say the gosh darn. I guess I'll have to keep playing this gosh darn game of baseball,
which is just a children's game after all.
But I don't know if they fed him to him or not, Jim. In the later years, I've read that there was a compiler of sorts who would kind of go through material and then present a big packet of things that Vin could go through. And Vin was always diligent in his preparation, but he did have some help in finding some of those stories and then weaving them in, the personal anecdotes like you just said about Ichiro. His broadcasts were filled with those sorts of things, but I'm not sure that he, in the later years, was always finding those out on his own.
Well, I used to listen to him I still listen to him to this day to fall asleep. I'll put on an old Vin Scully game and I find his voice soothing, and that's okay. So I've listened to like the 88 World Series game. Don't want to listen to that one asleep because nothing happens in that game until Kurt Gibson hits that home run, and then you're waking up. Yeah. You don't leave that playing on there.
Yeah.
And the season that's improbable, the impossible. All the time. Right, but I met Vin once. Well, somewhat met Vin, right? So I went to see when my son Hank was 1 year old. The same day I caught a foul ball pop fly that was pitched by Clayton Kershaw. It's the only ball I've ever caught, right? But I was there and I had my son strapped to my chest in a baby Bjorn. I was walking along like Zach Galifianakis, you know what I mean? And I'm walking along, and then he was in the window at Giant Stadium, whatever that's called these days. I think it is called Giant
Oracle Park.
Oracle Park, that's the one. So I was walking around to our seats, and his booth, so he's maybe 8 foot ahead above us in a little thing. And I looked, and I got my son's arm, and I said, "There's Vin Scully up there, like this." And he leant all the way out from the booth, and he went, Hey there, little fella. I hope you enjoy the ball game. Like that. Oh, God. It was
He reached his hand out?
He reached out and gave a little. He loves kids. He always liked kids. Whenever they cut to kids in the crowd, he's like, look at that baby there up against mother's skin. Sleep, little boy. Sleep, little boy. The game will be here for you tomorrow. But you're all.
So he touched Hank?
You're all tucking. No, he reached out and waved at him. And he was Kate's got a photo of it.
Oh yeah,
he was leaning right
didn't know
out.
that,
He was leaning right out of the booth, waving. You asked Kate about it. She was
man. Between that story and the Tommy Lasorda story with Hank,
Tommy Lasorda told Hank off. He looked Hank in the eye and goes, "You hang out with good people, you'll be a good person. You hang out with bums, you'll be a bum."
He said he remembered.
Do you
that.
understand? And Hank's like this, turned and looked at me. He goes, "Keep looking me in the eye."
All right, Mike. Well, this is what we're gonna do. I'm sure this will just become a conversation of sorts because Jim's into Vin Scully so much. But I'm going to ask Jim a series of questions about Vin Scully. And at the end of him answering them, you're going to grade him on his accuracy, 0 through 10. 10's the best. Jack's going to grade him on his confidence. I'm going to grade him on how hungry I am. And if you score 21 through 30, these are quotes of Vin Scully's. Losing feels worse than winning feels good.
Losing feels worse than winning feels good. That's an exact. Loss is heavier than gain.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So a baby's born, that's nice. Your baby dies, that's horrible.
Yeah.
Right? That's the worst.
That's an
right?
extreme example.
But you know what I mean? You
Good
find,
example, though.
You find $10. Awesome. You lose $10. You're doing this for fucking hours, right?
If you score 11 through 20, it's easier to pick off a fast runner than to pick off a lazy runner.
It's easier to pick up.
Think about that one, but it makes sense.
That's true, though. Yeah.
And then 0 through 10, worst score. Statistics are used much like a drunk uses a lamppost for support, not illumination.
He's very good.
Vin Scully quotes.
I would argue that Vin Scully, I don't know if there's anyone on earth who had a job for longer.
Well, those are some of the questions. What year did Vin Scully begin his broadcasting career with the Brooklyn Dodgers?
Before the invention of television. So he was the commentator for the Brooklyn Dodgers while they were obviously still in Brooklyn. And I believe 1949.
Okay. How old was Vin Scully when he started calling games for the Dodgers? How old was he?
Probably 20.
20, okay. Vin Scully's broadcasting...
Yeah, I think he did it for 70-something years, like the actual job. So I'm going to say 19.
Okay, so how many...
That's not going to make all the difference.
So how many years did he work as the Dodgers announcer? I'm not going to ask that first part of the question.
I think I think he had the job for 70 years.
70, okay. Vin Scully was the youngest to ever do what?
Have sex with Marilyn Monroe. Call the World Series.
Okay.
Call the World Series.
Wow, good.
This one, I think you'll know. You already said it. Scully is known for a memorable call of a famous home run in 1988.
Kurt Gibson.
Okay, what other famous calls did he make? Like very significant calls in sports.
Oh, there it is.
Sports.
There it is. Granke's not getting along with Puig again. Turns out Puig's an immature sort of a fellow.
By the way, his quotes on Puig are hilarious. Like,
the wild horse. There
he
he
goes.
goes.
The guy from the Cuban sensation. Like, he's like, just like they're very funny, like stuff that he said. But now he has some very famous calls, like monumental.
What? That not baseball?
He's got one in baseball for sure that is like very monumental, and then one in football that I'd say is very famous too. But
did he call? Did he? I believe he called, and it wasn't. I believe he called Hank Aaron breaking Babe Ruth's home run record. Were they playing the Dodgers or something? I always just remember that call, and the fans ran out and that type of stuff. Maybe Vin was calling that.
Okay, and in football, he maybe did one. No, maybe he definitely did one.
In football, I don't know anything with football.
Say something big that could happen in football.
You wouldn't know this.
I remember that football call when John Lennon had been shot and they interrupt the game and the guys like this. They just have to interrupt the game.
It's not that.
John Lennon has been shot. Third down.
How many?
That was Howard Cosell, by the way.
Yeah.
Broke
that was?
news about John Lennon on Monday Night Football.
In Monday Night Football, we have to tell you that Howard Cosell, my Howard Cosell and my Vin Scully
Very similar.
and my John Lovitz are all in the same ballpark.
No, your Scully's good. Your Scully is
Well,
actually
thank you
one of the
there,
better
young
ones I've
man.
heard.
It's nice
the
to hear
Cosell,
from
I'm
a
not quite so
coworker.
sure, but you
You're-
sound. I mean, your Vinny is very good. You clearly listen to him a lot.
How many World Series did Vin Scully call during his career?
Well, I think, and then he called two or three for the Dodgers since I've known him. 15.
Okay, and what year was this final broadcast for the Dodgers? You were around for this. You should know.
I remember that. Keep a thing in your heart. Keep a thing in a good night.
I have that queued up to play his last.
Yeah, play the thing. That's
Yeah.
but I can't. But I know, was that the year they went to Sydney. They went to Sydney to start the two games because I remember. I remember he just sweet talked all of the Australian public like this. People were like, so Vin, how much are you enjoying being here in Sydney? And the old fella was in his like late 80s, early 90s or something like this, and he'd been flown down there just to do two games and come back. They had him on a little boat ride around the harbour, and that was it. And he goes, well, Australia is like a fine wine. Even if you can just sip it for a moment, it's still pleasurable.
That's good. Very good.
Okay.
You don't need a lot of it to know that it's good.
Here's a question. That might.
Wait, what was the year he picked?
That's classic.
He didn't do the COVID years. He was already gone before COVID. 1919, and I remember going, and COVID, we won the World Series in 2020, and I thought, that would have been nice if Vin was there to do it. I'm going to say 2018.
2018. What did Vin Scully say at the beginning of each game? Now, this might vary.
It's time for Dodger baseball.
Yeah, he definitely said that. Okay. Well, that might be some other version.
And
before his career with the Dodgers,
if you say anything about how I treat you, I'll kill you. You hear me? to his staff. He was very violent. Always had a knife on him.
Oh yeah,
a knife.
little known fact.
Yeah.
Before his career with the Dodgers,
When you're a jet till you die.
Before his career with the Dodgers, what sportcasting job did Vin Scully hold?
I know he grew up a Giants fan. But that was when they were also over on the East Coast. But was it another sport?
I don't know.
Was it in the commentary? I'll just say that he was a radio producer. He sold ads or something like that. You know, mailroom at a radio station or something.
Most memorable call, we said a couple already. There's one more I forgot too. That's a huge one, baseball one, but whatever. Well, you already answered that. What was unique about Vin Scully's broadcasting style that set him apart from many others?
Well, he told story after story. He knew everything about every single player, and you know what? He did it all by himself.
Yeah.
Everybody else has always got someone, a colour person to bounce off or something like that. Vin just sat in the booth by himself. I assume they were handing him bits of paper, and off he went.
Yeah.
And this is back when games were typically 3 hours, 15 minutes. Now they're like 2 hours, 40.
The one we went to the other day was an hour 58.
Yeah, it's too fast.
Crazy.
Everyone else is right into it, but when you go to the game, I haven't got a fucking chance to buy a hamburger.
What has sped it up so much?
They've got a pitch clock on it.
That's what Mike was talking about.
They've
earlier.
got pitch clocks on it and all that type of stuff, so they have to pitch within a certain time.
And the batter has to be in the box too.
Which I kind of like in the early rounds, but I don't like my closer moving that quick. I like to see the sweat on everyone's brow as they're thinking and they're contemplating.
I do like that in the playoffs, especially when there's like that kind of,
Yeah, when you see a pitcher who's losing his zone and everything, he just sort of stands there and you can see panic. Oh, I don't like all that. Yeah. But also it's like, it keeps them more honest at first. I don't know, but everybody. Look, I'm also a big fan of no designated hitter. I like the pitcher hitting.
Yeah,
I believe it's a different managerial game.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't have
when
Shohei
you take
this year.
people in, when you take people. Well, you would. You just have him DHing. this year. You have him pitching in the games where he's.
He can't pitch right now.
Oh, okay. So So in the other ones he would play outfield.
Your first round pick.
You could play outfield.
Okay.
Yeah, what was the new rule that every pitcher has a designated hitter? Is that the new rule? I know they were doing something years ago.
Yeah, it was
I don't
just the
remember.
American League and the National League have now the same rules, and they used to be different.
And now they're
things.
both designated hitters?
Yes, both designated.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. I am a big fan of BetterHelp and big fan of therapy in general. If you haven't given therapy a go, what's stopping you? How can it hurt? It can't make things worse. Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. What's something that you wanted to learn? Maybe it be gardening, a new language, I don't know. Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because your back to school era can come at any age. I've benefited from therapy. I recommend therapy to others. I've had trauma in my life and therapy has helped, but it also just helps when you problem shared is a problem halved, right? If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched up with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional fee. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/IDK today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/IDK.
Which player's perfect game did Vin Scully call in 1965?
I know he called Clayton Kershaw's no-hitter in about, let's say, 2013. But in 1965, that would have been Sandy Koufax.
Name the significant award he received in 2016. Yeah, we don't need you here, Mike. Sorry.
It would have been the Mark Twain Award.
No. What humorous advice did Vin Scully give about baseball that also applies to life in general? This could be anything. But you just throw out a quote or something like that. But this is a good one that Mike has.
If you're
here.
holding a bat, you're in with a chance.
Probably a good. Which ballpark?
Which is true, right? In any situation, if you got yourself a baseball bat, you've got a shot of getting out of there.
Which ballpark did Vin Scully describe as his favorite to broadcast from?
It's going to be a trick. It's not going to be Dodger Stadium. So let's go back to Ebbetsfield.
Okay. That one actually is not a significant milestone. It was an award he won, but okay, we'll go to this one. What game show did he host? And when did it take place?
Welcome to another episode of Gosh Darn It.
Gosh darn it. Do you know what years Gosh Darn It ran from?
Gosh Darn It ran from 1971 to 1973. All the contestants were smoking.
Okay.
It's pretty good.
It is rumored that the umpires did this before every game when Vin Scully was calling.
When Vince Scully was calling.
Yeah.
I reckon they probably made sure their shirts were tucked in or something like that. You don't want to look silly in front of him.
Yeah, okay. Mike, how did Jim do on his knowledge of Vin Scully 0 through 10? 10's the best.
I was very impressed, particularly with the impersonations, but the knowledge was at a very high level. I'll give him an 8 on Scully knowledge.
Yeah, really good.
I do know about that.
Yeah. I mean, there are a couple of misses here and there, but very close. Like the game show, it wasn't 71 through 73. It was like 1969 to 71 or 2, but that's in the ballpark. It wasn't the Gosh Darn It show. It was called It Takes Two. And hi, everybody, and welcome to It Takes Two. I mean, it was, as a young kid, because I loved everything Scully did, I would make it a point to watch Vin Scully hosting this game show called It Takes Two. It did get canceled after a couple of seasons, but it was right there, 69 to 71. So he was very close. Jim was very close on that.
And then
What happened on the game
he would
show?
sing at the end, "It takes two, baby.
It takes
Just
two.
me and you. You know it takes two."
What happened on this game show? It Takes Two.
Well, it was.
It'd be like the Newlyweds, I bet you.
Yeah, it was kind of, but a celebrity couples and a little bit kind of like what they knew about each other. Kind of had that Newlywed Game feel, if I remember. I haven't seen an episode of it. I think there are some on YouTube.
Yeah.
I haven't checked them out for a long, long time. But it was celebrity couples, and Vin would take them through a series of questions.
Yeah, it says numerical
whoever had
answers.
the most points would win.
Numerical answers to questions, which usually entail stunts and or demonstrations. So 3 celebrity couples competed in this version for each question. Yeah.
I'll say this about game show hosting.
It was rebooted with Dick Clark in 1997 for 1 year, but it didn't go anywhere.
Game show hosting is a joyous occupation. It's a wonderful occupation, game show hosting. I went into it sort of going, I don't know about this. Oh, sorry. Don't know about this. And then, you know what's good about game show hosting? A lot of the time, you're making people's dreams come true. Like with my show, you get $100,000. That's life-changing amount of money for a lot of people. It pays off the debts they need to pay off, or gives them a deposit on a house, or whatever they need it for. You know what I mean? And you can't take that for granted that someone's life is changing in that moment. It's wonderful. Game shows.
A lot of celebrities on the show. Betty White was on it. Roddy, Ed McMahon.
Betty White back then was still a nice piece of ass.
Bowser and Sean
said.
Gosh, Janet, you got legs up to your armpits.
It takes 2. All right, get back to the scoring, Jack. How did he do on confidence?
It takes 2, and doesn't she have a lovely pair?
He got an 8 because he admitted he didn't know some of the answers.
Oh, wow. That is pretty confident. 16.5. I'll give you a 10 because losing feels worse than winning feels good.
Thanks,
Nice.
I don't want you to feel like a loser.
No, I don't know stuff.
What year did Vin Scully begin his broadcasting career with the Brooklyn Dodgers? Jim says 1950.
No, he
or
said
1949. Sorry.
He said 49, but 50 is correct. So, I mean,
Really
again,
close.
that's right in the ballpark.
Yeah. And then, so this, because when I was asking these questions, we'll get to them. I was trying to think of the timeline here. How old was Vin Scully when he started calling games for the Dodgers? Jim said 19. And he was
22, actually, but I think he started with 20, 21, then worked his way backwards. But he was 22 when he began with the Dodgers in 50.
Wow.
I used to like to sit under the speaker and listen to the roar of the crowd.
That's right.
And
That's right.
I never
That's what
got
him
bored
hooked.
of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he said the roar of the crowd, the crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd.
Can you imagine being the best at something at 22? It'd be crazy.
He used to be the best at something.
I'm not sure he was necessarily known as the best at it at the age of 22, but by 25, I think that's one of the questions. He was 25 years old when he called his first World Series, and that's still the youngest that for any announcer ever to call a World Series game. So that was, in a sense, saying this guy's the best in the business, and he's 25 years of age.
Yeah. That's
Well,
insane.
I think that a lot of people have modeled their tone off him, you know what I mean? Like that's like the rhythm, the patter of being a commentator.
Sure.
I liked how every year he used to tell the same story on the anniversary of the moon landing. Every year. You can probably find. I heard him tell this story. He goes, I tell this story once a year on this particular day. And he goes, I had just finished watching the moon landing, and we were at an away game, and I was staying in a hotel. And then we got in the elevator, and there was these 2 businessmen, and they were standing there, and one of them said to the other one, did you watch the moon landing? And he said, well, I did, but not for long. You can only watch so much of that.
That was
It is a funny
July
story.
20th, 1969, and I was and the reason I know the Dodgers had to be out of town is I went to an Angel game that very day at Angel Stadium in Anaheim, and so that's where I was. Baseball game or stay home and watch the moon landing. Let's go to the ball game. So we went to the ball game, but the game stopped for 5 minutes when they put up on the big board, we have landed on the moon. And Reggie Jackson and the Oakland A's players and the Angels players came out and all stood and applauded for a few minutes. And then the game resumed. So I remember the moon landing, not for the elevators and all of that, but for Reggie Jackson hitting a home run that day. And for the fact that I was at a baseball game and they stopped the game to acknowledge the moment.
That's cool.
Wow.
So funny.
That's my moon landing story, July 20th, 1969. I don't tell that every year on July 20th, but I do remember the day
I'm glad you
pretty
proved
well.
me correct because I would said they were at an away game. If they were at a home game, would have ruined it. No, he was in a hotel lift. There's only so much of that you can watch. It is a funny thing to say.
Old hat,
No one's
yes.
ever seen anyone land on the moon, and the guy's like, you can only watch it for so long.
It is funny that you said Reggie Jackson came out and applauded too. It's like,
Yeah.
That was
Hey,
before
guys,
Mega.
out there.
That was before. No, that was before screens. That wasn't a TV screen. That was just written like the tidbit.
And then they just clapped in the air like, "Good job, guys, up in the moon."
Yeah, exactly. And they're right. There was no video of it. It just said, "We have landed on the moon," and up on, on the scoreboard, "We've landed on the moon," and that's it.
Have you ever seen the movie The Dish? The Dish.
And everybody came out and clapped.
Go watch the movie The Dish. It's a very fun movie from Australia about when we landed on the moon. It's because the satellite that the feed was coming through Australia because it was the time difference and the access to the Earth. So it came through Australia in a sheep paddock on a satellite dish is how we saw the moon landing happen. But it's an interesting little. It's a true story, but it's a comedy.
Now it would be on everybody's phone, and people would be like, "Fake."
Yeah.
Yeah, conspiracy
Well,
theorists.
they lost the shuttle for a bit. They lost it for a bit because they had a blackout and it wasn't pointed towards.
That's when Kubrick was doing stuff with his cameras.
No, this guy, the guys working in the sheep paddock in Australia, they lost the shuttle and they were like, "Fuck!" And all the NASA was like, "You still got contact?" And they're like, "Yeah." And there's like a million different coordinates that they could have put in there. And in the end, one of them went, "Just point the satellite at the moon." They go, "Where could they be?" Point it at the moon.
What is that thing?
It's like trying to find a radio station. They go, "Fucking, we found him again."
Vin Scully's broadcasting career spanned how many years did he work as a Dodgers announcer? Jim said 70. It's pretty close on that, right?
It's close. 67.
Bloody no hope.
67.
Okay, so name me a person who had a job for longer in this world.
67 years.
Even the
musicians. Like McCartney, how old is he?
McCartney's done. No, McCartney's not. McCartney's 83.
How long has Biden been?
And the Beatles,
politics?
he would have been famous in the Beatles. Not even famous in the Beatles, but doing the job in the Beatles.
Oh, yeah, because it's a different job. Yeah, but
19.
Like as just the Dodgers announcer, so that's a specific job.
Just as one job. I don't think there's anyone on earth who's done one job for longer than Vin Scully. The Queen. What did the Queen?
Not in sportscasting. Not in sportscasting. That's the longest run by one announcer with one team in the history of sports.
I'm sure in the
sportscasting.
In the future, because they start so young, there'll be like some people who make iPads. It'll be like, I've been making iPads for 80 years because they start as kids.
Yeah. Bill's Burgers.
They have the guy from Bill's Burgers started in the 40s when he came back from.
Yeah, it was his 40s.
He came back from the war.
It's a local burger spot.
Wait a minute, no, Bill's wins.
Why?
Bill's been doing that longer than Vin. Bill's still going.
No, but how old? He started in his 40s.
No, he started after he came back from World War.
In the 40s.
He started when he came back from World War II.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Bill.
Bill, he has Vinny beat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a local burger joint here in LA on Oxnard. It's in the Valley.
Van Nuys.
If you ever come back to LA to visit, called Bill's Burgers. Good burgers too, and he's back there. He'll be back in the back somewhere. Just kind of just.
The hours get less and less every year.
Yeah, he's got the same griddle.
Every year he takes an hour off each day.
We've talked about Bill's Burgers at least 500 hours.
Heard you.
Yeah, we love Bill's.
Okay.
The Queen would have done something similar. Her
Queen,
dad died young.
Yeah, she's been around a while.
So we already said he was the youngest to call a World Series game at the age of 25. In 1955. Oh, and then Kirk Gibson. This was the memorable home run. You already knew it because you were talking about it before.
Yeah. That Kirk Gibson, man, that's the sweet spot on the bat because he had a gimpy leg and his back was a bit thing. And
so it was a 1988 World. For people that don't know, it was a 1988 World Series. It was the Dodgers versus who were they playing?
Game 1.
Oakland.
The A's, the Athletics.
Yeah. And maybe you know more about it than I do, Mike, and you've listened to it more. But I was just painting the picture for people that didn't know what the scenario was.
Well, it's Jim has talked about it. It's one of the great calls that among the so many that Vin made. The thing I love about Vin, just for a pause for a moment though, is I discovered him when I was 7 years old, and the count was the 2-1 pitch on the way, breaking ball in there for a strike, and the count 2-2, and I was hooked on that. I was mesmerized and hooked on a 2-2 count to Ron Fairley in April of 1966. So, and to me, that's his greatness consisted in being able to take a game in April or May, a nondescript kind of game, and make it compelling and exciting and interesting and just mellifluous in how it sounded. So I say all of that to say the 1988 bottom of the ninth inning, is one of the, and Jim, you said you've fallen asleep to it. I've watched and listened to it many times over and over again. It's just a classic bit of oratory on Vin's part. The game itself was pretty good too, but his whole call of Kirk coming out of the dugout, limping up to the plate, getting the count to 3-2, and hitting the home run is as good of a call of a moment in time as I've ever heard. It's spectacular.
Okay, so in the year that improbable, the impossible.
We have it here. If you
so let's have a listen to it just quickly.
We don't have the whole thing. We have
a lot of people listening in Australia and Britain to this podcast, and you want to hear this.
We don't have the whole, but we have what you're talking about, Jim, on there.
But just Kurt
thanks to a bed and breakfast on book.
No, that's an ad.
Yep.
Yeah.
Trying to make weird call. Weird call.
Making money on
Valvoline. Do you ever have little things in your back pocket that are ready for big moments? It's like how I have heckle put downs that I've used over and over and over again, and then sometimes I just do it off the cuff. But do you have a few little things that you go, if a grand slam happens, this is what I might say. If a walk-off home run happens, I have these few things ready to go.
It's a great question, Jim, and I should, because I've been caught up at times where, oh, wow, I wasn't expecting that, or I should have something ready-made for those moments. But on the other hand, and listening to the master of the craft and a guy that inspired me to get into the whole thing, I'm not sure that he rehearsed. How could he know? Okay, if Kirk Gibson limps to the plate and hits a pinch hit 2-run home run, that amazing line that he uttered. Now, I do about in a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened. That's perfection. But I do think for the Hank Aaron, and we may get to that. I think, Forrest, you talked about moments.
Did I bloody call
calls. That? Yeah. I do think he had something prepared for that, because if that was just off the cuff eloquence about what a great moment for Atlanta, a great moment for baseball, a great moment for America, I have to believe in my heart that he prepared that, because if he didn't, then he is absolutely the best extemporaneous speaker since Socrates, and maybe greater, because that was a history lesson, a sociological lesson, a history lesson about the relationship between races in our country and where baseball fit in, where that home run took place. That also is a thing of beauty. I do have to think that one was prepared a little bit.
We have both of those.
Well, let's listen to Kurt.
Kirk Gibson, this is he's at bat already. Yeah.
But the game right now is at the plate. High fly ball into right field. She is gone! In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
You always said, right, if you listen to this bit here, he always said he said in big moments, you let the crowd do the commentary.
And that's what Mike was talking about at the beginning, too. I was just listening to it there. There's a lot of space that he just leaves there for the crowd. That says this amazing line,
Hank
too.
Aaron.
Yeah, no, but he says that amazing line too in a year of the improbable.
Okay, so let's for our non-baseball fans explain what is about to happen with Hank Aaron, how important this was.
I'll let Mike can explain.
Yeah, actually, Mike would be better to do this.
Well, I was it was a Monday night game, April 8th, 1974, and I didn't hear Vin's call in that moment. I heard it later. I heard a national radio broadcast, and I think, Jim, you were kind of alluding to this, and correctly so, that why did he call Hank Aaron's 715th home run? It's because the Dodgers were playing in Atlanta's Fulton County Stadium that night. So it was just this great call, this iconic moment of sportscasting was just on the Dodgers radio network. Now, that's a big network, and that's a lot of people, but it wasn't the national radio broadcast. It wasn't the game on television. It was the Dodgers radio network, and Vin just happened to be there.
So the bloke who does the commentary
happened to be there for so many of the great moments. And so Hank Aaron had been chasing Babe Ruth's home run record that had stood since the Babe's retirement in 1935. Babe Ruth hit 714 home runs. And Hank Aaron at the end of the 1973 season was one short at 713. He homered in Cincinnati to tie and then came home to Atlanta for this Monday night game. And with the eyes of the world on him, and he had been receiving throughout the offseason from the end of the 73 season into 74, death threats, horrible racial epithets. Hank said he kept that mail and those letters just as a reminder to him of kind of what he was going through, what he had to endure. And there were people saying, if you play in this game, you're going to lose your life. You're going to get shot. We're going to kill you. And so there's a moment after Hank hits the home run, and Vinny calls it just so eloquently and perfectly. He lays out for like 2 minutes after he calls that it was gone. He goes away for 2 or more minutes while the crowd cheers this incredible moment in baseball history. But his mother, Hank's mother, Billy, came running across the field and just threw her arms around Hank after he crossed the plate. If you see the images of it, YouTube it brings tears to the eyes. It's a moment that was meant for Scully to call, but it was a moment that it's just so poignant and sweet. And Hank's mother saying, I just wanted to put my arms around my boy and hug him and hold him and make sure that he was okay.
Yeah,
and it was appropriate that the poet and the master storyteller Vin was there to call maybe the most famous home run in baseball history, Hank's 715.
I like that. So that was just the Dodgers radio. That means there was an Atlanta guy who also called it, who's been forgotten in history.
I feel sorry for that guy because it's not as good.
And it's his team, and his call was like this. Big hit, that.
Way to go, Hank.
Something like that.
700 and something home runs.
we have Vin Scully's call.
The fans seem to like it.
Vin Scully's call of Hank Aaron hitting the 715 the past Babe Ruth. It's really the end part is like the thing.
Straight away. Fastball is a high drive into deep left center field. Buckner goes back to the fence. It is gone.
They're fireworks, not gunshots, by the way.
He's running around the base. Just got the home.
Your commentary's not bad.
Yeah, pretty good.
That was an impersonation of the Atlanta bloke.
For baseball, what a marvelous moment for Atlanta and the state of Georgia. What a marvelous moment for the country and the world. A black man is getting a standing ovation in the Deep South for breaking a record of an all-time baseball idol. And it is a great moment for all of us, and particularly for Henry Aaron, who was met at home plate not only by every member of the Braves, but by his father and mother. He threw his arms around his father, and as he left the home plate area, his mother came running across the grass, threw her arms around his neck, kissed him for all she was worth.
He's the best. In the Deep South, to Georgia and Atlanta.
Yeah, that's really good.
And so I know, and I agree with what you're saying. If he had that prepared, I mean, it's great, But if he didn't, then it's like, holy cow!
I think he would have had the gist of it.
Yeah.
I think he was an off the cuff guy.
Yeah.
But I think he knew he would have had to say something important. We got to find the bloke from Atlanta. What did he say? Like this? This guy, a black man. I'm not acknowledging that.
It's be Babe Ruth's record forever.
They should put an asterisk on it.
And they'd be right next to each other too. That would be the hard thing too. Once Vin Scully was that famous, that you'd see him in the next booth, like, shit.
Well, who's the name? Because obviously I've never listened to him. Who's the? I think he just retired maybe last year. The Spanish guy who's like the Spanish Vin Scully.
Oh, for the Dodgers.
Yeah, for the Dodgers, and he did it for 50-something years. And the Spanish-speaking people, that's their Vin Scully. Who's his name?
Jaime Harim.
Jaime Harim. And he still came out until a couple of years ago.
Jaime did the games for 64 years, I think.
Right.
And he and Vin were very good friends. And they traveled together. They on Dodgers goodwill ambassador trips, but they would talk to each other before almost every game I've read.
Yeah.
In fact, I have a book. I want to show it to you real quick so I don't forget it. Perfect Eloquence. It's an appreciation of Vin Scully, put together by a fine writer named Tom Hofarth. 67 essays are in this book, one for essentially each of the 67 years. There's a lot of material in there, Jim, about Jaime Jarrín.
You're in there,
and
right?
Vin's relationship, and one of the essays I was honored to be asked to contribute one, and one of my essay, I have an essay of the 67. I'm in there with Bryan Cranston. Bryan Cranston's in this book, and so is yours truly, Mike Parker. But we all pay tribute to what Vin Scully meant to our lives, and Jaime. There's some great material on Jaime Jarrín and his place in the Southland during all those years as well.
Just quickly before before we end the podcast, fucking hell, I can
hurry up.
This Bazana, is he
Yes.
Is he worth the hype? Is he a good lad? How is he?
Oh gosh, he's one of the best, Jim, and I'm just so thrilled for him. I've got Bazana, a custom-made shirt by a fan. Bazana, Australian for baseball. He's about to, go, as you said earlier. He's going to be, if not the first, a very high draft pick, and has a long major league career ahead of him. And his father, Gary, and I have dialogued quite a bit through Travis's years at Oregon State. Gary Bazana is a big fan of yours, Jim. In fact, he was rallying with you all the way through the years about getting the North Sydney Bears revived. He said that was his favorite team, and he wants to go to a game with you someday. Maybe you and Travis and the Bazana family, Gary and his wife, Jenny, and his other sons, Mitchell and Hayden, they'd all love to go to a game someday with you to see the revival of the North Sydney Bears.
Well, I'm a big supporter of Gary's from Sydney, and
Jim's dad's name is
my
Gary.
dad's a Gary from the same area.
Okay.
And anytime you want, the North Sydney Bears was my team as well, and we are getting closer and closer and closer, and we are in talks right now. And for me now, it's Perth or bust. Perth is my second home in Australia. I went to university in Perth. I think if I moved back to Australia, I would live in Perth, and especially if they brought the Bears back. But the black and red need to be back on the field. And if you're a Bears supporter, why they ever got rid of the North Sydney Bears is beyond me. The North Sydney Bears is everybody's second team. No one hates Bears. No one hated the Bears except for Manly supporters, and that's a whole other thing, and I can't get into that right now. That's another podcast altogether. But we're doing our very best to get the Bears back. So
Gary's son, Travis Bazana, I hope, I can tell your knowledge level, and you've already connected with him. You're going to love the guy. He's one of the best young men ever to come through the program. An absolute joy of a guy.
Handsome young man. I think he's going to be games. Drowning in pussy.
He's just a spectacular person, as well as one of the best hitters ever to come through college baseball, and he's got a long major league career ahead of him. I bet you'll see him at Dodger Stadium someday.
Well, so he's a second baseman, and from what I can tell, he hits for average and for home runs, and he looks to be a type of bloke who's, if he gets in the majors, going to get like 30, 40 home runs each season and hit about 280 if he sort of stays on target for what he is. But is he fast? Is he steal bases? What else has he got going on?
He does, yes. He set the Oregon State single season and career stolen base record. Wow. He's the Oregon State single season home run record holder. Damn. Oregon State career home run record holder. And Oregon State's been playing baseball on the same field since 1907. So there's a lot of baseball that's come through Corvallis, Oregon, and Oregon State. And Travis Bazana essentially sits atop the record book in almost every category. And he runs and he defends as a second baseman, a complete player. But again, just a tremendous young man who has been dreaming about this his whole life since he was 3 years old. He kind of fell in love with baseball. He's had some mentors that helped him and saw that he had some talent in Trent Olgen and Ryan Rowland Smith. They kind of brought him along, put him under their wing, but he's just worked relentlessly to be as great as he possibly can be. And I think you're all going to enjoy him. And I know, Jim, you will, just being from your land and from your hometown. You're going to love this.
I collect sports cards, just a bit of fun. My son likes basketball cards, so I got into it with him, type of thing. And I don't like the autograph cards. I find them a bit like, I don't get autographs. I don't get them. It's like, now we all got cameras on our phone. You prove that you met someone with a photo these days. I don't need a scribble on a bit of paper, right?
Right.
But I do have a Travis Bazzano autographed Oregon State card. Yeah, I thought I'll get it on the ground level with this kid.
Yeah.
In case he goes on to be the greatest baseball player ever, I'm going to have an Oregon State card of this guy. It didn't cost that much, but I ordered that, man.
Yeah.
That's nice, Jim. That's good to hear.
Let's guess. We got a few more questions here. Let's do these before. 67 years, 20.
Hey, is his dad Gary into baseball? How did Travis get into baseball?
Gary did play some baseball himself, yes, and so Gary liked baseball and gave Travis, sort of a choice of paths to follow. So he was playing rugby and cricket and baseball, but it was baseball that Gary enjoyed most growing up, and just baseball what Travis ended up gravitating towards. And I don't know enough about cricket to know, but Travis has said that cricket helped him. He's a guy that hits to all fields.
Without
Travis
gloves,
has power. He's a left-handed hitter, but he hits to all fields. And his dad and Travis have both told me that cricket helped him be able to hit the ball anywhere, behind him, in front of him, this way, that way. I don't know enough about the art of hitting in cricket, but Travis was very good at it, and he said it actually helped him develop as a baseball hitter.
Well, I would bet money that me and Travis were born in the same hospital.
Yep.
He's from Hornsby, went to Turramurra High. Hornsby Hospital was where I was born, man. And Hornsby's still where my dad goes to the movies. I like the cinema there. It's got good parking.
You'll find that out. I don't know what hospital he was born in. You do know what you were born in. I bet you'll find out before I do about Travis and where he came into the world. But I think you guys have a lot in common.
So the school that I went to, although they've improved it a lot now, was a pretty rustic old public school, meaning for the public, not the British term for public means private. So public school. And there's been about 10 Australian players playing Major League Baseball. I think they've all been pitchers. There was one other one, starts with N, who played for Atlanta back in the day, who was a hitter. But anyway, we had a guy called Rich Thompson, who was a relief pitcher for the A's. And he went to my school. And I can tell you, my school had no sporting programs. Nothing. We were lucky if the government gave us a ball.
I was trying to look up names. There's not a lot here, but I can't.
Rich Thompson. You see Rich Thompson? Because my mother taught him at the school. She was very... But anyway, but that's the whole thing. So my school, I went to check after I saw Travis. I went to check because I went to my school page. So St Ives High School. I went to the Wikipedia page. Fuck me, St Ives High. Why have you taken me off the famous alumni? Yeah, fuckwits. Like, who else you got? You got the baseball guy and me. We were the two.
Wait, I want to see what they have now.
They got rid of me and Rich. Rich isn't there either. Like, who you got to fuck to get on the famous alumni of St Ives High School?
Wait, there's an Olympic swimmer?
Ellie Overton.
Yeah.
She got a fucking bronze. My career is definitely a bronze in the Olympics.
You're the bronze of comedians. I see a T-shirt in the future.
There's an academic.
Yeah.
No,
George Williams.
All right, we got some more Vin Scully
Did they leave
questions.
Megan Conley in there?
No.
They left. We had a couple of soap
Friends
stars.
All Rome.
Friends All Rome, the band, was from my school.
Candy Raymond.
Forrest knows Friends All Rome.
No, I don't.
No, I thought it sounded like something.
Jeanette Young. Jeanette Young was the governor of Queensland.
Yeah, the governor of Queensland. That would be the premier.
It's a bronze medal too. They're all bronze medals.
That's pretty good. But no Rich Thompson or Jim Jefferies. Go on, get the fuck out of here.
All right. How many World Series did Vin Scully call during his career? You said 15, Jim. What's the answer, Mike?
I've seen 28. I think 28 is the right call, but another source said 20. I like to err in the other direction, so I'm going to say 28 for Vinny.
All right. And the final year of his broadcasting for the Dodgers was Jim was close.
Jim was very close on that. It was 2016. His final broadcast was at Oracle. It was at Oracle Park in San Francisco. His final call, and that was it. after 67 years. And it was, I went to one game in 2016, but it was again in Anaheim, an Angel-Dodger game. And my daughter Lydia, and I hope you enjoyed your conversation with Lydia and food sovereignty here recently.
Now.
She and I have had a shared love of baseball, amongst other things, and she took me on a trip. And Vin Scully was, I didn't care about the Dodgers-Angels game. I just wanted to get underneath a little bit like you did, Jim, get underneath the booth in Anaheim and kind of wave up to my hero, knowing it was his last year. And everybody was blowing kisses to him and waving at him. But I do think for a moment he might have made eye contact with me, as I'd like to think that anyway. So, 2016, and I made sure that I at least got into the same ballpark once that year that he made his final call.
And before his career with the Dodgers, what sportcasting job did Vin Scully hold?
Well, he was a radio reporter. In fact, it was going to be one of my dinner. What was his first job as a sportscaster? So can I give this as a
sure?
What do you call them?
Dinner party
facts or party facts or whatever. Yeah. Can I go with that now,
sure,
Forrest?
Sure,
is that okay? His first professional broadcast wasn't baseball. It was at his favorite ballpark to call games from, Fenway Park, to get to that question. Fenway Park. And Red Barber needed a guy. Vinny had sent tapes and letters out to all the radio stations around New York. He was born in the Bronx and grew up in Manhattan, and was sending tapes out after he graduated from Fordham, and said, I'd like to get a job doing something. So Red Barber, one of the Ford C. Frick Hall of Fame broadcasters too, even before Vinny got there in '82, Red hired this young guy to go call a University of Maryland Boston College football game at Fenway Park in November of 1949. Late November, wind howling, raining. They didn't have any room for Vin in the press box, so they make him go on top with a little light bulb to see his notes and things. With the rain and the wind, very little light. And Vin called the game and didn't utter a peep the entire broadcast about the conditions that were awful that he was working in. When Red Barber found out later that the young kid had called such a good game amid those conditions, that kind of stuck in Red's mind. So a year later, when a job with the Brooklyn Dodgers opened, Red said, I think I'm going to hire that red-haired kid that didn't complain about the wind and rain at Fenway Park calling a football game in 1949. And the rest is glorious history for Vincent Edward Scully. But his first job as a broadcaster was calling a football game at Fenway Park.
I'm one of the look. I'm one to complain, right?
Yeah.
You know me. I'm one to complain.
Yes.
If I was called that one up here, I'd go, okay, we got 2 on, 2 out, and fuck me, it's raining. I got to tell you, I'm up here, buddy. That's a rat. There's a rat gnawing on me.
Also, you're calling a baseball game.
That's how bad I am. That's how bad I am.
First and 10.
How do they fit? I can't imagine fitting a football field in a baseball field. I guess it would.
Because 100 yards, it's like 300 feet.
Not with the green giant. You'd have one corner just cut off.
Yeah, it's 60 yards on this side and 100.
Yeah, that ladder's in play.
Yeah, memorable calls. There was one other memorable call.
I got Sandy Koufax right.
Got Sandy Koufax.
I want credit for that
because we skipped ahead and he answered something about. He did work alone. That was the answer to that one, correct, Mike? The set him
that
apart
was
from everybody
great
else.
too, Jim, and you're right, because the age we've lived in for many years is 2 or 3, sometimes 4 people in a booth, and as Vin has said, he learned early that he wanted to be talking to you, not to the person necessarily next to him in the booth. Now, he was good when he had a broadcast partner. He had a lot of good ones over the years, but he preferred to work alone because then, he was at work and just sharing from that deep and resourceful mind the stories and the things that would kind of flow through his mind or that he had prepared for, but he felt like he was talking to you and not necessarily bouncing his great stuff off of the person next to him. And that's partly why he worked alone, just to give his mind that beautiful voice of his free flow. And he was one of the last in the profession to work alone. Again, we're not going to have another Vin Scully type just because of the way things are set up these days.
Do you work alone?
I do. Because, I don't know if that's a budgetary thing at Oregon State or not, but no, in football, I have an analyst, and football is the analyst's game. I try to get in and out of the play, 2nd and 7 at the 43, hand off to Ken Simonton, breaks a tackle, down he goes at the 39. Jim, that was well blocked, was it not? And then my broadcast partner comes in and describes what just happened, and then I come back and say it's 2nd and 7 at the 43, and then go off again on the next play. Vin was very good at football and has one of the most iconic calls ever in the National Football League, which we can get to in a minute. But I do work alone in both basketball and baseball, and I think having grown up listening to Vin doing the same thing in those formative years in my life, 66 through 72, I just sort of felt like that's the way it should be, or that's the way it's done, not realizing that Vinny was sort of unique in that respect in working alone. Even in those years, a lot of teams had 2-person booths, but the Dodgers with Vin Scully, Jerry Doggett, Ross Porter, etc., those guys generally worked alone. And I just said, well, if that's the way it's supposed to be done, then I'm gonna give it a shot.
The football one. Okay, so I will give this to American sports because of timeouts. Because of the stopping and the starting of American sports, they do lend themselves better to commentary. Like if it's very hard to basketball's a terrible sport to listen to commentary on the radio because you're like, who's passed to who and then what? And then
on the radio, it's one of the worst. Yeah, I love basketball. But
I love basketball, but on the radio, it's a shocker. Baseball is the best sport on the radio because you can paint the entire picture. I know how many runners are on. I know what the count is. Right. I know if they've gone deep in the field, if they've come up, if they're in. I know the theater of the mind. I know everything that's going on. American football, at least they can have the play. The play stops. They can dissect the play. They can.
You know what down it is in distance.
You know if they're going for a Hail Mary or they're doing a running play or they're doing whatever they're doing. You know what they're sort of set up for. So American football's good. Ice hockey, what?
On the radio, you mean?
Have you listened to ice hockey on the radio?
The puck's over there. It's over there. Oh, he fell over.
No wonder Canadians have such patience because if they're listening to ice hockey on the fucking radio, that's a nightmare of a sport.
Plus, it's like the names, like if you don't follow,
and it's like this. It's near the goal. It's at the other side of the field. What?
Kupachowski just passed his Kirk.
Yeah, and everyone's called like there's French names out of nowhere, and then Lafleur, LaFlop.
Jean Paul just passed it to the Russian dude.
I think that's why I never gave hockey a shot. The only sports I did and do are football, basketball, and baseball. But it's hard for me, Forrest, to hear you say basketball on the radio is terrible or hard to listen to when another of my heroes growing up, I loved Vin Scully, Dick Enberg with football, but Chick Hearn. I mean, Chick Hearn was a legend in Los Angeles, as you know, and he could make rebound to Chamberlain, outlet to Jerry West, get it to Gail Goodrich. Goodrich gets it back to Jerry, dribble drive in, deep feeds, Wilt slam dunk. I mean, that's good, right?
Yeah, but it's good because you get the end result. And I grew up listening to
that and thinking that was pretty good.
Who is the bloke?
I listened to it on the radio.
Lawler's Law or whatever. The guy, the Clippers bloke. And he was just like this.
Ralph Lawler.
Ralph Lawler. I like Ralph Lawler. Bingo, bango!
Well, that tells you something, doesn't it?
I still listen to basketball on the radio because I'm a basketball junkie, and if I have to be in a car during a big game, I'm listening to it on the radio, and it's harder because it's faster, just like Jim said. Yeah, it's harder. It's harder for you, I'm saying, as an announcer, like
it is, but
everything's sort of set after the fact.
You liked Chick, didn't you?
I didn't grow up in LA. I grew up in Miami, so I didn't listen to him. I know his calls, and I know so.
Right.
Well, who was your big Miami guy?
Well, in Miami on the radio, the guy, I can't remember his name right now, but for the Miami Heat, he was such a pessimist. Like they get down 9, and he'd be like, "Yeah, I guess that's it for tonight." I'm like, "It's the third quarter." We got but on TV, I used to love Eric Reed. Still calls the TV, and then Dr. Jack. He was up for he was a Portland coach for all. Jack Ramsey.
Jack
Ramsey was one of my favorite color guys of all time because he He had so many sayings too. He was like, "This away, that away, hard away." Like was the guy's name, you know?
Oh yeah.
He was.
Right,
I would smoke a lot of pot and listen to him and laugh, and it was.
But Jim is right though. Baseball and Vin himself said of the three sports. Vin said basketball is rat-a-tat-tat. I've heard Scully talk about this. Basketball's rat-a-tat-tat. It's machine gun fast like pace. Football is formulaic, as Jim said too. You have a play, then you dissect the play, then you get on to the next play. But baseball, there's so many different things going on: the wind, the sun, the disposition of the outfielders and the infielders, how long the pitcher is trying to take his sign back in the good old days when that happened, the batter stepping out of the box, playing with the Velcro that I heard you, Jim, say. Vin Scully once said that's what's slowing baseball down.
Velcro slowed down baseball.
Their gloves. Only Vin would notice something like that. But there's so much going on that it gives a guy like Scully an opportunity to just create that picture for you.
And so one of his famous calls, really famous calls in football, was Joe Montana throwing to Dwight Clark in the end zone. They call it the catch, Jim.
Right.
You've seen it. You've definitely seen it on TV because it's on commercials and things like that. And he's like,
right.
He said,
it's a good call.
Yeah,
it's a really good call.
He says, Dwight, at the very end, he goes, he lets the crowd roar for 30 seconds for returning like it's a madhouse at Candlestick with 51 seconds left. Dwight Clark is 6'4", but he stands about 10 feet tall in this crowd's estimation. That was like his call, and I'm very fair.
Who out of the young blokes do you rate? Like, who do you think is not the next Vin Scully, but who do you think's like a lot of people? I don't mind Joe Buck, but some people don't like Joe Buck. They get really angry about Joe Buck. I don't mind Rick Monday. I very much like what's his name? The pitcher we were talking about
Oral Hershiser.
Oral Hershiser. Hershiser. And I like it because he just can call every pitch. As a pitcher, he's like this.
Right.
He looks like this. He'll throw him a cutter on this one. And they're fucking dead. He does it. He knows each time. He goes, what I would do is I'd throw something away. Something to the slider away. Like that, right? And then boom, slider away. It's like he's like a fucking prophet.
Yeah.
Or he's watching the game 10 seconds ahead of me.
or he's a world-class athlete. Yeah.
What's different about calling games today, I mean, there's a lot of things different, but one of the things is the analytics spits out immediately whatever the pitch was, whether 2-pitch, sinker, slider, cutter, sweeper, 4-pitch, four-seam fastball, 2-seamer, whatever. It's instantaneous, and I've been hearing a lot of the young broadcasters will kind of tell you it's after the fact in a sense, and Vin Scully's greatness was, and Hank Aaron even talked about in an introduction to a book, somebody asked Hank about his 715th home run, and he said he liked Vin Scully's best. So there goes the poor Atlanta guy again. Yeah. But Hank himself said, I like Scully's call best. But Hank said Vin knew the pitches. Now, Vin, before all this analytics stuff, gave you the spin rate and the velo and the vertical break, the horizontal break, all these things that all the young announcers have access to, and they work them into their broadcasts. Vin was saying, breaking ball outside, the 1-2 slider a little bit high, ball 2, 2-2. Fastball down and away, ball 3. I mean, he knew what the pitches were and would let you know long before there were tools to tell you what those pitches were.
Wow.
So I think the young broadcasters have more tools at their disposal. It doesn't necessarily mean they convey a game better just because they have all that information in front of them, in my opinion, anyway.
I sometimes think the stats now in baseball, I like numbers. I like the sort of looking over the
Exit
numbers.
velo.
Yeah, I like all of that type of stuff. And people's averages versus their RBIs versus their on-base percentage and all this other stuff. But what I don't like is when the computer just tells me, "Oh, you have a 4% chance of winning now." Fuck off. You know what I mean? You're down 4-1 in the 8th, 5% chance of winning.
Yeah.
We can still win. Fuck off.
Yeah, they do that with
very negative, those stats.
Yeah. The humorous advice Vin Scully would give about baseball. Some of them were the categories for the
show that we do.
But there's one you put in here Mike, that I like? That is a famous one, or you wrote it to me.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Forrest. What do you got? I forgot what I gave you.
It was something about
what do you
day to
got?
day, right? Day to day.
Oh, yeah. He was looking over an injury report. Then was on the Cubs and Andre Dawson. He said, well, Andre Dawson was scheduled to play today, but he's on the injured list and listed as day to day. Aren't we all? Pause for a moment. And that was perfect. I mean, that was, again, the essence of Scully saying perfectly what needed to be said about Andre Dawson, a particular player being day to day. And then he universalized it for all of us.
I got a mate who is
from Miami, the Hawk.
I got a mate who's got an elderly father, as we all do. When you're this age, you got an elderly father, and his father is saying they go, "How are you doing today?" And he goes, "I'm still buying green bananas." That's my favorite one. I'm still buying green bananas. That
Pretty
means
good.
because they don't come good for about 4 days. So he assumes he's going to be here.
I like it. That's a good
He
album.
assumes he's going to be here by the end of the week.
Who said that?
A mate of mine's dad says it.
Oh,
It's
I
his
like
thing.
that.
He goes, "I'm still buying green bananas."
On this last question, this was sort of maybe a myth. The umpires did something before each game with Vin Scully. Is this true or not, that they saluted him?
Well, Bruce Fleming in that book that I referenced earlier, Perfect Eloquence, Bruce contributes an essay, an umpire contributed an essay, and he said that Vin was heralded, regarded, almost revered by umpires because, unlike yours truly and almost every broadcaster I've come across, oh, that's a terrible call, he missed that. Yeah, and Vin never said that about an umpire in 67 years. Did not question their calls. I find that almost impossible.
There must be. There must be.
I know, Jim. There had to be a moment or two. Oh, he's called out and he was clearly safe. But according to Bruce Fleming, a longtime National League umpire, Vin never second-guessed umpires. He just said, well, this is how Mr. Fleming saw it, and so the inning is over, or whatever, Vin would say. But he protected and covered. He respected umpires. Umpires thus reciprocated that respect and admiration, and Fleming's crew and many other umpires took cues from him. Before games, they'd look up in the booth and give Vinny a salute or a wave like, hey, we know you're calling our game and we're glad you're up there in the booth.
I wonder if, when they all get out of the bullpen and they all have a fight, right? What is that called when they all...
A brawl.
Yeah, no, but when they all run out, what is that?
Benches clearing brawl.
Bench clearing, right?
Right.
I got to find footage of Vin calling one of them. I reckon
There's got to be a few of them. Yeah.
Very measured about it.
Did
he ever do boxing?
He is very good at those moments. He's great at calling those types of incendiary, people fired up. He called, and I've never heard the call, but Jim, and you guys have probably heard of the day John Roseborough, the Juan Marichal, the Giants pitcher, was August 22nd, 1965 at Candlestick Park, when Marichal, the Giants pitcher, took his bat and began to swing it and hit the Dodgers catcher, John Roseborough, over the head with it. Now, both Vin Scully and Willie Mays are credited with helping to kind of calm that Vinny, because of his demeanor and calmness, helped keep Dodger fans from rising up for some sort of riot when the Giants came back to Dodger Stadium. And Willie Mays, to me, the greatest baseball player ever, whom we just lost, then also praised how Willie, and described in that moment how Willie was on the field, wrapping his arms around John Roseborough and doing everything he could to be a peacemaker in that volatile situation. I haven't heard Vin's call. I don't think there's a recording of it available, but I've read about it, and it sounds like those two, Scully and Mays together, helped kind of keep the peace in that terrible moment.
He keeps swinging, but that's not the ball.
Swung on and missed.
Oh, we're gonna need more than a brush to clean home plate.
I found a video called Vin Scully loses it when Almafitano stupidly waves Greg Brock back to third.
All right, let's have it here.
I'd like to hear it if you got it. Joey Amalfitano was the third base coach. I've not heard this. If you got it, I'd love to hear and get a little worked up.
There was a wonderful old writer in Chicago, God rest his soul, named Jimmy Enright. And he taught us all, I think, a very good lesson in life. one time said, "Hi, Jimmy, how are you?" And he said, "Son, remember, only suckers beef." There's no sense complaining for the Dodgers. They are getting their clock cleaned. Junior Ortiz is the new catcher, and it's 11-2 Pittsburgh. A chopper to Bream, big hop, and it's a fair ball down the line. And Brock on his way for 2. They're going to wave him for 3. I can't believe they waved him. He's out. Waved him down by 9.
So they were down by 9. He waved him in.
I think we've been disconnected. Oh, now, come on.
Yeah, he was upset there for sure.
That is beautiful, and it tells me, I mean, the book that I've referred to, Perfect Eloquence, describes a saintly, wonderful soul and man that nobody had an unkind thing to say about. Everybody loves this man, and he loved everybody. The love affair with Dodger fans and baseball fans is incredible. And it almost makes you think that he would be incapable of a moment like that, but he clearly was troubled by Joey Amalfitano waving the runner. And I'm glad to hear it, because I'm troubled in virtually every broadcast I do by something.
I had a driver the other day that picked me up from the airport, and he was I was wearing my Dodgers hat, as I always do, and he goes, you like the Dodgers? And he goes, once picked up Vin Scully. and I was like, I want to hear any other celebrity. I don't want to fucking hear. I wanted to hear that he got on the phone and told his wife to fuck off or something. You know what I mean? Because people, when they're in the car, those like drivers hear more about celebrities than anything.
Right.
Yeah.
And I go, how was he? And I go, he goes, he got in the car and he looked at me. He went, "Hello, sir. Isn't it a fine day for a game of baseball?"
Wow. Do you have another dinner party fact? Because the thing that you wrote in here that you needed to check, I checked, and it is correct, by the way. Do you remember this? Or do you want
he was born female.
No.
Oh, okay.
No. It was a fake one.
Go ahead, Forrest.
You already did your dinner, so I'm gonna ask Jim one more question and see if he gets it. Okay. There's a famous TV character named after him. Who is it?
Scully from the X Files.
Yeah. I should have phrased that differently, because that was really easy when I phrased that.
And Forrest, you did corroborate that. That's correct.
I did. It says Chris Carter, who was the EP for the show, named Scully after his favorite sportcaster, Vin Scully of the Dodgers. Also, John Doggett was another character in that show, who they said was a broadcasting partner of Scully's, I guess.
You also Jerry Doggett. Yeah, Jerry is one of those guys, and I know that anybody who remembers those days, Jerry did the third inning and the seventh inning, and Vin did everything else. And we, as young listeners, would say, "I can hardly wait till the seventh inning's over. We can get Scully back on again." But Jerry came to be a guy that we all liked, because the beautiful part of every game going in the late 60s, Jerry would say, "Well, Claude Osteen has completed his warm-up tosses. He's ready to go. And now for the play-by-play, here's Vin Scully." Vinny? Well, thank you, Jerry, and hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good evening to you, wherever you may be.
No, wherever you may be.
Beautiful. And so Jerry Doggett was the setup guy to bring Vinny in, and we would all just wait for those moments. So Jerry was a good broadcaster, but a little bit like Jim's been referring to that poor guy in Atlanta when Henry hit his home run. Sometimes other Dodger broadcasters had to feel a little bit that way, but Vinny never made them feel that way. And Vin was the star, but all of those guys, Doggett, Ross Porter, the people that worked with him all the years, write glowing tributes to him in this book and in elsewhere. He was a beloved man.
It feels like even outside of the Dodgers, he's regarded as the greatest of all time. So the Cubs had that guy, Harry Carey or whatever. Harry Carey, who was a bit drunk, was he, or something? He had a... That's what I've heard. He had a few sheets to the wind. And then by the seventh inning, he'd get out and sing, like, "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," and go, "Let's get some runs."
That's good, too. That's good. That's Will Ferrell.
Bob Uecker.
Bob Uecker, who's still commentating. He's got to be the last for Milwaukee, who, if people at home will know him from the Major League movies. Yeah. He did the commentary for the Major League movie.
Yeah.
Mr. Belvedere?
Yeah.
Oh,
He was the star of Mr. Belvedere.
What? He's a star.
Yes,
of
he
Mr.
was.
Belvedere?
Yeah.
And his many appearances on Johnny Carson, those are worth YouTube. I mean, he'd go on with Johnny and in self-deprecating humor. Euchre was as good as that as almost anybody I've heard about his lack of star power as a Major League Baseball player. He's very good at that.
Well, he started out as a player,
Jim,
did he?
Go ahead.
Euchre was a player
What's that?
before he was a commentator.
Yep.
Yeah, Euchre was like a 200 hitting catcher who owned Sandy Koufax, though. If you talk to Koufax, who's your hardest out in Major League Baseball, it might have been Bob Euchre, this nondescript 200 hitting type catcher, but somehow, for whatever reason, Bob connected a few times off of Sandy Koufax, but off of very few others. But he's very funny and very talented. But Euchre and John Miller, who's a great broadcaster for the San Francisco Giants and still working, and John does a great impersonation of Vin, by the way, that's hilarious, captures the voice and the timbre and all of that quite well. Almost as good as you, Jim, not quite. But John Miller said that Vin Scully, let's face it, is the greatest sportscaster, let alone baseball. He just said, is the greatest sportscaster ever, period. And that seems to be almost a universal view of this great man.
Have you ever heard the commentary of Richie Benaud for the cricket?
I have not.
You ask Gary Bazana about Richie Benaud.
I will.
Richie Benaud, he was a spin bowler. He was at one stage the greatest spin bowler on earth before Shane Warne or whatever, but he played the game 100 years ago. And if for some reason, like the Nine Network, they all have the same blazers for the commentary, these sort of blue or green blazers. For some reason, he was allowed to wear like a tan or a baby powder blue one. They made special ones just for him, but he's worth listening to.
Bob Euchre did 118 episodes of Mr. Belvedere. He was part of the show, for sure. I just don't remember.
Yeah. They must have filmed that in the winter.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm serious.
We have Vin's final sign-off. We're going to hear that right now.
Here we go.
You know, friends, so many people have wished me congratulations on a 67-year career in baseball, and they've wished me a wonderful retirement with my family. And now all I can do is tell you what I wish for you. May God give you for every storm a rainbow, for every tear a smile, for every care a promise, and a blessing in each trial. For every problem life seems a faithful friend to share, for every sigh a sweet song, and an answer for each prayer. You and I have been friends for a long time, but I know in my heart that I've always needed you more than you've ever needed me, and I'll miss our time together more than I can say. But you know what? There will be a new day and eventually a new year. And when the upcoming winter gives way to spring, rest assured, once again, it will be time for Dodger baseball. So this is Vin Scully, wishing you a very pleasant good afternoon, wherever you may be.
I'm going to give you my number.
The best that ever was and ever will be. Well, how good is that? It brings a tear to your eye.
You're about to tear up there.
I was about to tear up. I was like, oh, my goodness. And like, I'm an atheist. He's talking about God and miracles and shit like that. I'm like, oh, you're so right.
Jim, I was thinking that very thing, is he might be the only person that you would listen to, even with a sense of admiration, for the eloquence with which he spoke of those divine things. I mean, when Vin's saying it, they sound pretty good, don't they?
But that's the whole thing with divine, mythical things, God and that type of stuff. If there is a God, the God that he just explained is the one that I want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That answers every prayer, that there's a rainbow after every bit of rain, and there's a thing, you know what I mean? Like, that's
he lived that way. He lived that way, and that's the amazing thing. Just the way in the book that I've talked about, Perfect Eloquence by Tom Hofarth, it's worth reading. If you like Scully at all, you'll find nuggets of great wisdom and joy and his love of baseball and family and friends. But virtually every essayist in that book, I think I'm the only one that hadn't met him ever, that's included in the book. And they all speak of the way he loved people, the way people loved him, and how he knew the names of every person at Dodger Stadium, whether it's the elevator operator, the janitor with the broom, and the outside the press box before games. He greeted people by name. a lovely human being, as well as as you said, Jim, the best there ever was at his craft.
And look, this is probably a weird thing to end it on, but he had tragedy in his life as well, doesn't he? It didn't go all smoothly.
He did. And I don't know much. I don't know a lot. I know he lost a son in a helicopter crash.
He lost his son in a helicopter crash, yeah.
And he lost his first wife to an overdose of medication. She was only 35 years old.
Jeez. Yeah.
And so, and he's been very private about those things. He's never allowed or authorized. He never allowed or authorized a biography in his life. He just was private in those matters, and those very difficult matters. That's why I'm not on retainer selling books, but the Perfect Eloquence book deals. It's as close as you'll get to the Scully life story as told from people who knew him and loved him and cared about him. There's a photograph of Bryan Cranston walking with Vin at the ESPY Awards. They walked together and received or presented an award together. I'm not exactly sure what it was. And I think, Forrest, you were talking about the Presidential Medal of Freedom that Vin received that year from Barack Obama as a high award that he received at the end of his broadcast career. But that book contains stories somewhat, Jim, on what you're talking about, the pain and the tragedies that he did endure, but always with grace and gratefulness to just getting to continue to do in his profession what he did for 67 years.
I think that I've got a deal at the moment. I'm working on a biography, and I'm finding, and it's a long way out at the moment, but I'm finding the process challenging, to say the least. Because you have to uncover so many parts of your life, things that you don't want to revisit, things that you're ashamed of, things that you're happy with, and things that you're happy of, you don't want to seem braggy.
I'll write an essay. Just get people to write essays for you.
Well, this is the whole thing. One of my favorite. I always say I haven't read many books, but I have read some biographies. One of my favorite things, and I've listened to a lot of audiobooks, but one book that I did read that I really enjoyed was the Chris Farley story, and it was just interviews with Chris Rock and David Spade and all these different comedians who worked with him. And I think when you allow others to do the bragging for you, it's very interesting, because I'm finding this like, well, here's an achievement of mine or something. I don't want to, you know what I mean? So Vin Scully wasn't a braggy guy. I don't think.
No.
Yeah. And also, look, it's a strange coincidence. We're getting to a bit in the biography now where I have to talk about my nephew dying in a helicopter accident.
Yeah.
And I don't want to talk. I don't want to visit that. You know what I mean? So I'm sure he didn't want to talk about that. I find it there was one of my favorite musicians is an artist from Australia called Peter Allen, and I like him for reasons. My father liked Peter Allen, so it was something from my childhood that I enjoyed. Gay guy, married Liza Minnelli, died of HIV in the end, wrote the famous song I Go to Rio, which many people, when my baby smiles at me, I go to Rio. But the thing about him, he said he never wrote a book because if you want to know about his life, listen to his lyrics, right? And so I sort of feel that with me stand-up as well. I feel like I've told you half the stories already. You've already heard all these fucking things, you know. Yeah. But that's interesting that the bit where you just said he never authorized a biography, because he was everyone's, well, for me, he was a grandfather, right? He was everyone's favorite relative. He was part of your family. I listened to Vin Scully more than I did anyone else. And when I moved to America, the voice that I heard the most was Vin Scully's. Out of anybody. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any friends. I had this radio channel that I listened to each day of a sport that I was just getting into, and that man spoke to me every day. I'm even getting welling up right now.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, it's funny how people can touch you and you never met them.
Yeah.
And that's not where I started with this conversation. I was talking about biographies.
Richard Lewis, the comedian Richard Lewis, speaks of how Vin, in a very difficult, challenging time in his life, Vin Scully was the calming voice that just helped him, like, oh my gosh, I can listen to the Dodgers every day. My life may be horrible right now, but I can listen to Vin Scully tonight. And
is Vin's wife still with us?
Brian had a similar experience too, listening to Vin growing up in LA.
Is Vin's wife still with us? Is she still with us?
No, I don't believe Sandy is any longer. His first wife died, as I said, of an overdose, and I think Sandy passed a couple of years, I think, before Vin did. I don't know the exact detail on that.
2021.
So after,
yeah, 21, and Vin passed a year later on August 2nd of 2022.
Yeah.
I was calling a baseball game. In fact, Travis Bazzana wasn't playing that. He played in Corvallis in the summer of 2021. But I was calling a baseball game in Corvallis, Oregon, and somebody came over and handed me a note while I was in the middle of a broadcast and said, in the note said, Vin Scully has just passed away at the age of 94. And I didn't know how that news would impact me, Jim, but like you're saying, you're welling up just thinking of, it was hard for me to continue that broadcast. Just thinking about what I'm sitting here calling a game on this August night in 2022 because in April of 1966, I walked in as a 7-year-old boy into my friend's garage, and his dad was listening to something on the radio, and I didn't know what it was. But I said, well, what are you listening to? And he said, well, it's baseball, the Dodgers. Who are the Dodgers? What are the Dodgers? And finally, I got around to, who is that talking? And Mr. Holland said, Vin Scully. And that was it. So I reflected back to those moments because I didn't miss a game from that point on. So here I was being handed the news about the passing of this man. And it was, you're right, Jim. I felt like I lost a long time friend and loved one that had meant so much to me all my life.
And it's funny as a commentator that you, as we said, what's his name? Walter Cronkite? Not Walter Cronkite. Who was the guy that we said that?
Bob Uecker?
No, who did the football of John Lennon?
Or Howard Cosell.
Howard Cosell, right? So Howard Cosell has to report that John Lennon has been shot, right?
Yeah.
You have to report to the people there that Vin Scully had just passed away. I was at the London Comedy Store when the news broke, and I was walking on stage that Richard Pryor had died. And I felt for some reason at that moment it was my job to tell the audience that, and I walked out on stage and said, I just think you should all know that Richard Pryor has just passed away. Anyway, here's some jokes. Women, am I right?
Yeah.
Tough transition.
Stuff.
Mike Parker, thank you very much for being here today, talking to us about Vin Scully. The book again, and you should definitely check that out. It's called Perfect Eloquence, an appreciation of Vin Scully.
Yeah,
Mike
Perfect
Parker
Eloquence,
is in there,
and
among
it is
other
an
people.
appreciation of Vin Scully, and it's sent by Tom Hofarth, the longtime writer for the LA Daily News and other newspapers, and he does a great job. He was a friend of Vin, very close with Vin, and he compiled all these essays. And Jim, I think what he did for Vin, what you're talking about, it's actually a pretty good way to get. Forrest said he'll contribute, and Jack, you probably would too.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's a good way to go about telling one story, and it's a beautiful.
Let's do that
book.
after I die. I don't think it'll be as good a seller as the other one.
Well, yeah, and this came after. It just came out this May, so it's only been out a couple of months. Not quite 2 years after Vin's death. But
you know,
this has been what's that?
You know why we really needed Vin Scully to have a biography? Because the audio book would have been the if he read his own book. I was a young boy up in Brooklyn.
Yeah. That's pretty. See,
Do your teeth,
I
said
keep
your
saying
mother.
that's good, but that is good, Jim. You've got the timbre and the. I mean, maybe you can do some sort of voiceover yourself for an audio book.
I could try to do the audio book of Vin Scully, but I'm not good with the old reading.
So just take a while.
I want to thank you guys for having me.
I'm not illiterate.
A true joy.
Close.
And the very fact you had my daughter Lydia on too recently on food sovereignty, and I watched that. It just came out. I just watched it recently. Your interactions with my precious daughter Lydia were beautiful to watch and funny. And
I didn't know how that was going to go.
It's the end of the podcast. I wanted to get this off my chest.
What you said to my daughter
was acceptable.
It was good though. I loved it. Thanks for having her on.
Well,
and
Mike,
I think Lydia was the conduit to you for us to say, hey, my dad
100%.
likes this Vin Scully guy, and I'm grateful for her for putting us together.
Yeah, it was 100% Lydia's idea, and she had mentioned W.C. Fields, who you're very fond of, who I love, but then she said Vin Scully too, and I said, no, we're doing Vin Scully because this is the podcast Jim's been waiting for. So.
Down the road, if there's ever any down the road, both I heard you guys singing together, Lydia the Tattooed Lady, and that is a Groucho Marx specialty. I forced my kids as they grew up to watch the Marx Brothers and W.C. Fields. My mom made me do the same thing, but I've been a Fields fan and a Marx Brothers fan. I've seen all of their films. I think they're geniuses of what you do, Jim, so well. I don't know if you like them at all, but I love Fields and the Marx Brothers, so maybe we can talk about them someday, too.
We used to do the Jim Jefferies show at a studio where they filmed
Mr. Ed. Oh, I Love Lucy.
Animal soup and all that type of stuff. Whatever.
Duck soup.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Duck soup.
Duck soup was Duck soup. All the Marx Brothers films were filmed.
A very old studio.
At that studio.
The Paramount. Those were Paramount films, and among the greatest, to me, the greatest comedies ever made in the early 30s. Were the Marx Brothers works, Horse Feathers, Duck Soup, Monkey Business, Animal Crackers, The Coconuts. Those are just classics of comedic cinema, and I've been a fan of Groucho and Zeppo and Chico and Harpo my whole life.
Well, I've made my son sit down and watch all the Python stuff. He's watched everything now. Every sketch, everything. We've watched Monty Python from beginning to end. And then Chris Lilly was the next thing. I've made him watch all the Chris Lillys, but he took to Chris Lilly like a fish. Yeah. He loved Chris Lilly. Yeah. But, my son's getting a somewhat comedy education in the house.
Good.
All right, Mike. We have to sign off, mate. I got to tell you, that was a great podcast. What a wonderful podcast to end with. Look, if you're ever on a hill and it rains, let there not be any mudslides.
We live in Oregon, so I'll keep that in mind.
I'm just trying to be Vin-like. If you're ever on a road, make sure your tires are always pumped.
Well
this
said.
is why I'm not the great commentator.
Meet you some. Hey, get to a North Sydney Bears game with the Bazana family, and that'll make my life.
Mate,
that'll be a great report to get back from Gary and Travis. And
the North Sydney Bears game. The dream is that we get them into Perth, and then we play a couple of games each year at North Sydney Oval. And look, we're talking. You want to talk about an oval with like weird sort of dimensions? It's a cricket pitch. And so they've just fitted the rugby field in the middle, and the corners are too small, so that when people dive in for a try, their head would crack against the concrete barrier on the outside. Nice. And there was one side of the field had no grandstand; it was just a hill. Can you imagine in the modern day paying tickets and you just have to find a patch of grass next to other human beings? Oh, wonderful place.
We gotta go.
And then there's a tree, Moreton Bay fig tree. Anyway, thank you so much, mate.
We're done now.
Thanks, you guys.
Okay. Hey, if you're ever at a party and someone comes up to you and says, Vin Scully only commentated for 60 years, go, well, I don't know about that, and walk away. Good night, Australia. Thank you so much.